Okay, welcome back, guys. Thank you so much for being here with me today on my YouTube channel for another video. So like I said in the intro, today is going to be all about the bench boost chip, and I'm going to bring you guys what currently at the time of recording is my optimal game week 1 bench boost draft, if that is something that you're looking for. There so there will be a few notable omissions from this team. I haven't got Mo Salah in there. I haven't got Erling Haaland. I just felt personally for me, if we're talking about a sole bench boost for game week 1, spreading that money around, all 15 players versus just trying to bag the 11, I felt like it was more beneficial to kind of exclude them. We're going to get onto them, when we come to the midfield and the forwards. I'll explain just in a little bit more detail why they're not in my team, but the majority answer is just to basically spread the money around, just to try and get as best, value for position as we possibly can. Let's start off with our two goalkeepers first. We've currently spent 9.5 million on this. We've got a 5 million in Matt Sells and we've got a 4.5 in Bart Verbruggen. Both of these guys have got home fixtures to start off, which is great. And just a quick disclaimer, 11 out of the 15 are at home for the first game week. And this was completely unintentional. I was just happened to be building the team and it just sort of fell that way. But it's always nice to have, majority of them being home. I think not that it guarantees you anything. I think it just gives a little bit more of, a confidence boost to say that, okay, the first game week of the season, these sets of players, a large selection of them will be at home. So I think that's always a good thing. So we'll start off with Sells first. Now, I think Nottingham Forest, I'm expecting them to have, somewhat of a decent season. I don't know whether they'll be able to replicate what they were doing last season. We may see a little bit of a drop off, but I think up first against a Brentford team who, have lost their captain, they've lost their manager, they've lost one of their star forwards. There's potential that Johan Visser might be leaving from them as well. I think Brentford are going to struggle this year in general. And I do think that, going away to Nottingham Forest on the first game week is a very difficult ask for them, obviously with a new manager, a lackluster squad compared to what they had last season. So that's the reason why I've gone for Matt Sells in goal. I just think that, out of everyone, I'm hoping that he's got quite a high chance of getting a clean sheet in that first game. But Bruggen, on the other hand, is a little bit different. I just didn't want to, as you'll see, there are, a couple of triple ups in here, and I just wanted a little bit more variety in this one. And I think the game for Brighton against Fulham, like I said, it is at the home. I could see that game just being a 0-0. I can see it being quite a cagey affair. No one really wanted to lose the first game. No one really committing that much to try and win it. I think if someone does, it probably will be from Brighton's end. But, I could see it being one of them games where it's just a 0-0. But Bruggen usually will hopefully rack up sort of the 3 save points. I think it's quite a safe option. And I think obviously at 4.5 million, you can't really go too wrong with that. So we won't go too much into the goalkeepers, because at the end of the day, they are keepers. But those are the two that I've got currently. Right, so onto the defense. And here is the first triple up. So we've gone for Milenkovic and Ola Aina to make a triple up of Nottingham Forest defense. Now, obviously, with these sort of moves and these sort of plays, it is high risk, high reward. Obviously, if Brentford, score against them, that's a clean sheet wipeout for all 3 of them. However, if Brentford don't score, is what I'm predicting. And I think when you're trying to do a team like this, especially from the start, from game week 1, there is a little bit of a guess that has to come into it. You almost have to sort of try and predict, what you would think would happen. You've got to try and base it off last season, but also, first game week of the season, not everyone's up to speed yet. So you have to sort of try and balance it out. But I have gone for the triple up for Nottingham Forest. Milenkovic obviously offers such a high threat from set pieces as well as the clean sheet odds. With the defensive contributions this year, also goes in his favour as a centre-back. He's probably more likely to get interceptions, tackles, blocks, clearances, those sort of things as well, which is why he was kind of a draw to me straight off the bat. 5.5, I think, was it a little bit expensive? Maybe not, because, he did have a really good season last year. But Ola Aina obviously coming in at 5 million, just a little bit lower, a little bit cheaper, just to try and fit in the budget. But like I said, I do think that they've got quite a good chance at getting a clean sheet from game week 1. So yeah, we have got the triple up of Nottingham Forest in defence. That's going to be followed up by 3 guys who are playing against 3 promoted teams. So we'll start with Aaron Wan-Bissaka first. Now, he is somebody who, I put in my last video, my highest percentage owned. I think a lot of people are on him at the moment. 4.5 million, Sunderland away at first. I think a lot of people are predicting that the 3 guys who have come up are probably going to struggle this year, as it seems to be the case every year. Obviously, we want a much more diverse league, but I just think the gap between the teams who come up from the Championship versus the established Premier League teams is very hard to close down. And I don't really see Sunderland getting off to a good start against West Ham. Obviously, West Ham didn't have a great season in their own right last year, but I do think Aaron Wan-Bissaka was one of the little shining lights in that season for them. He was actually getting a few assists as well, so it's just something to keep an eye out for. But I just think, great fixtures start us off, and at 4.5 million again just fits in with the budget nicely. Then move on to a second player who's playing against a promoted team, and that is Mickey van der Ven. Now, there are options with Spurs' defence. You could go for Destiny Udogie, you could go for Jed Spence. The reason why I've gone for Van der Ven is kind of one of 2 points. The first one is out of Udogie and Jed Spence, at the left-back slot, I'm not sure who's going to play. If I had to hazard a guess, I would say Udogie, but I just can't be 100% certain on that. So for that reason, just to alleviate any sort of stress about minutes, especially when you're using the chip game week 1. I want somebody who's guaranteed to start 90 minutes, and that is Mickey van der Ven. Obviously, it's a great fixture against Burnley. I think they probably will be the worst out of the three, because I think even the Championship, they were struggling to score goals. And I think coming to the Premier League is not going to help their chances of that much more either. So yeah, Mickey van der Ven for me, 4.5 million. Again, the same as Wan-Bissaka. He's playing against a promoted team as well. He will definitely start, with the defensive contributions. That's always a nice added touch for a centre-back. So yeah, for me, it's a risk. You could take a fullback who, more often than not will have more of an upside. But I just think for minutes risk from the game week 1, I want to get off to a good start if I'm bench boosting, and I don't want to have that in the back of my mind thinking, is this player going to start? Is it not? So Van der Ven was just a strong selection there. Last up to complete the defense is the man who would have been top of defensive contributions last year. That is James Tarkowski. He is a little bit more expensive this year. He's 5.5. So if you are looking elsewhere, Mikalenko, someone like that from Everton, I completely understand it. Leeds, I think Leeds will probably be the biggest challenge out of the newly promoted side. They've probably got the one who's got the best Premier League experience in the last few years, probably got the best squad as well. So I do think that this one could be a tricky game, but Everton have got a lot of positives going into this year, obviously moving into a new stadium. I just think that might be a little bit of a bounce for them as a club and as a team this year. Also, like I said, Tarkowski did finish top of defensive contributions last year if they were in the game, and that always just bodes well coming into this season. He's going to get goal. He'll score odd goals here and there from corners, but he'll get the tackles, the blocks, the interceptions. So yeah, for me, he just rounds up the defense. He's a little bit expensive. Like I said, you could downgrade to a 5 million, a 4.5 million again, and try and upgrade elsewhere if you wanted to. But I think for me, this defense just sort of balance out. It kind of has everything in terms of fixtures, in terms of defensive contribution, potential goal threat as well from some of them. So yeah, that sort of rounds off the defense there for us. And now on to the more fun stuff. So we'll start off in the midfield. We'll go from low to high. So we're starting off with Mohamed Kudus. 6.5 billion, I think, is absolutely great value. Now there is a potential risk that we don't know whether he's going to start or not. Of course, he's competing with the likes of Brennan Johnson, Heung-min Son's on the left-hand side. So there is that sort of element of risk, but I do think that he will play. I think, Spurs have brought him in for a reason. I do think he will get minutes. And I think the thing about Kudus is we all know what he can do. It was 2 seasons ago, he had a great season. Last year, maybe not so much, but I think, maybe Spurs, fresh environment, off to a great start against Burnley, a team who I think have just lost James Trafford, which was a big part of why they were keeping clean sheets last year. So I do think that there could be goals in that game. I think Kudus could, hopefully get his season up and running quite nicely, which means for us as a bench boost owner, we're going to receive those points if he does. Okay, next up is Morgan Rogers. And this is probably the one that I struggled with most. And I think if there was an argument to remove someone, it probably would be him. Newcastle is not the greatest fixture staff, and I don't think Aston Villa necessarily have strengthened that much in this transfer window either. However, I do think that whatever Aston Villa do this year, it's going to be between Watkins and Rogers. And I think Rogers at 7 million, I think it's an okay price. I think 6.5 probably would have been fair. Probably around the same as Kudus, but I have got him in here just to sort of differentiate a little bit and just give us another game and another fixture to sort of watch and keep an eye on. Newcastle, they haven't got off to a great start in pre-season. Obviously, they lost to Arsenal. There's a lot of doubt around, is Alexander Isak going to be there? If he's not there, I think that is a big blow for them, just from a mental standpoint. So I'm going to keep an eye on it, which is why I've got Morgan Rogers in there. I do think that there is potential for him to exploit that. Like I said, Newcastle isn't an easy fixture. I think if there was one player in this midfield that you would want to maybe change, like I said, if you downgrade Tarkowski a little bit, it'll give you an extra bit of money. Maybe you could move him up to someone else. But for me, Morgan Rogers, he's fine for there now. I do think, like I said, if Aston Villa do score, he's probably more likely going to have either hand in the goal or, scoring it himself. So yeah, not too fussed with him, but he is probably the one that you could change from this midfield. Then we move on to Florian Wirtz. Now, he is our Liverpool cover. Obviously, like I said in the intro, Mo Salah isn't in this team. And it was just for the sole reason that the money that you could use elsewhere for the bench boost just made a lot more sense. But I do obviously want to cover Liverpool's attack. Now, it's worth me saying, obviously, for me, setting this up, most people who would be bench boosting game week 1 probably would go straight into a wildcard game week 2 and sort of reverse their team back. I think if this is something that I was going to do and I was going to take a chance on a bench boost, I don't know if I'd want to use my wildcard game week 2. Maybe I'd want to get to game week 3, 4, 5, something like that. Just try and hold it as long as you can. I think if you are going to bench boost, then like I said, and you are going to hold your wild card, just back yourself without Salah. Liverpool haven't got an easy start to the season. They're playing Bournemouth up first. They've got Newcastle followed by Arsenal. So it's a little bit of a tricky start. And I think if there's one opportunity so far that it just looks from fixture-wise that you could maybe go against Mo Salah, it probably is the start of the season. Like I said, Mo Salah is Mo Salah at the end of the day, and he can score goals. I don't think anyone would be surprised if he had 3 from 3 in the first few weeks, and we'd all be kicking ourselves. But I just think value for position-wise, putting all the money into Mo Salah and having, the rest of your team, especially the bench, with a lot cheaper assets, especially if you are bench boosting, I don't think is the right move. And I think spreading the money around, having Verts in there, you're still covering the Liverpool attack. But like I said, Liverpool have got a difficult start to the season as well. And finally, onto the two big boys. This is where the majority of our funds are going to two players, and that is Bukayo Saka and Cole Palmer. Both have got good fixtures. Obviously, Saka's going away to Man United, whereas Palmer has got Crystal Palace at home. We'll start with Saka first. He's a little bit cheaper by 0.5, so it's not the end of the world. Arsenal have signed Victor Gyökeres. Now, I will speak about him in another video that I do solely based on the forwards towards the back end of this week. But I do think that this does elevate Saka as a player and as an FPL asset. I think that we'll see a lot more goals from Gyökeres, which means Saka probably will be the one doing some of the assisting. I think for him as well, having another focal point for Arsenal's attack will take pressure away from him. I think it will take markers away from him, which means he'll probably get a little bit more space as well. Man United just... It's such a difficult one, Manchester United, because they're just not looking good at all. They always do turn up against Arsenal. As an Arsenal fan, I can tell you this now. I don't think it will be an easy game, but I do think it's a game that Arsenal could get some joy in, and especially Bukayo Saka. Will he still be on penalties or not? That remains to be seen. Obviously, Gyökeres is record from penalties is very, very good. So we'll have to wait and see on that. But I do think, just from a creative standpoint, Bukayo Saka for me, whether you're bench boosting or whether you're just talking about your main team, I think he's got to be there. And last up, Cole Palmer, Crystal Palace at home. It's a nice start for them. There's still a lot of talk around Eze. Will he be there? Will he not? Obviously, if he's not there and he does leave Crystal Palace, that's even better for the likes of Cole Palmer and João Pedro, who we'll come on to. I do expect Chelsea to have a good season this year. I don't know if they can win the title. I don't know if they're trying for the title, but I do expect them to be back in the Champions League and, making inroads to where they did last season. And I think if they do that, Cole Palmer will be a massive part of their push towards trying to move up to that sort of second, third, first spot, somewhere around that. Cole Palmer will be very instrumental. Obviously, he's on penalties. He has some free kicks. I just think he had a great Club World Cup as well. He was very good, especially in the final. So I do expect to have another season from Cole Palmer like he did in his first one. Maybe not to that standard, but definitely better than what he did last season. Finally, onto the front three, Jarrod Bowen, João Pedro, and Dominic Solanke. So we'll start with Dominic Solanke first. It's exactly the same as Mohamed Kudus. I think that Burnley are the worst defence probably in the league now. Now they've lost James Trafford, I do think that there will be opportunities there for teams to score, 2, 3, 4 goals. Sorry to any Burnley fans out there. And I do think, obviously Dominic Solanke is kind of Spurs' focal point. Obviously, Son is another year older now, which means he'll have less effect on the game, which means that the goals will hopefully be looking through Dominic Solanke. Would I own him in my actual FPL team? Maybe not. Spurs they've got a sort of mixture of starts, so it's not the best, it's not the worst. I think for game week 1, a home game against Burnley just makes a lot of sense for me to own him up front. To come on to João Pedro, it's very similar to what I was just saying about Cole Palmer. Obviously got a nice fixture at home, had a decent World Cup when he came in as well. I do expect him to be Chelsea's starting striker. I think Liam Delap will probably play a secondary role in that, which means João Pedro is going to get opportunities to score. I think this is a big season for him in particular, because last season he was very reliant on penalties. Obviously, he's not going to have that at Chelsea, which means he's going to have to find goals from elsewhere. But I do think, obviously, the quality that Chelsea have around their attack, the Cole Palmers of the world, the Pedro Netos, they've obviously got the young Brazilian boy Esteval coming in as well. I think that there will be creativity there for Chelsea. Jamie Bino Gittins is in there, so João Pedro will probably get more chances. Whether he takes them or not is a different question, but starting the season off to Crystal Palace at home isn't exactly a bad thing. Finally, Jarrod Bowen, 8 million as a forward this year. Whether or not he will play as a striker remains to be seen. I think he played about 15, 16 games last year as a forward, but obviously that was due to Füllkrug being injured. If Nicholas Füllkrug is back, will he get more minutes up front and Jarrod Bowen go back out to the right? Probably, but I don't necessarily think it affects Jarrod Bowen too much. Some people argue, obviously, with the fact that when he was a midfielder, he had the extra point for a goal, extra point for a clean sheet, whereas now he's up front, he won't get that. That is true, but I think that bonus points will reflect better on him. He'll get more bonus from the goals he scores as a forward, because that's what they're expected to do. And I just think Jarrod Bowen, no matter where he plays on the pitch, he just has an impact on the West Ham side. If they score goals, if they create assists, it's usually down to his doing, if I'm being honest with you. And Sunderland up first is not a bad fixture to have at all.